Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Dbt03 here. Today we are back to set 3. And I know, it's quite late for the Japanese release, but I had a lot of things I wanted to cover, so now I finally get a chance to sit down and film Eugene set 3. Just a quick disclaimer, thanks to COVID and whatnot, I won't really have the opportunity to sit down and go through the decks of other people or even borrow other people's decks for this channel. So you won't really see a lot of set 3 content that soon, so yeah, only if I can get my hands on the actual decks, then I can review it. So I'm only going to review the ones I have right now on me. And of course, one of them that I have right now on me is going to be Eugene. I've heard, and you probably have as well, a lot of praise for set 3 Eugene. And we have to give credit where credit is due. Set 3 Eugene is actually pretty good. It's not going to be your next meta. It's not going to be, being able to completely destroy the top decks like, Leonard, Derek, and whatnot. But I will say that Eugene is in a much better spot than it was in set 1 and set 2. So, it's pretty good to pick up now, especially if you don't have set 3 yet, because you definitely want to prep for this deck while it's still cheap per se. But then again, this deck works exactly the same as it did in set 2 and 1. It's just that it's got a lot better at what it does, and good enough that it actually becomes pretty viable in my opinion. Eugene's definitely not the worst deck in the format anymore. So let's actually start it off with the right deck. Grade 0 is Nigel, he's our starter. This is Bart, this is Nigel, this is Randor, and this is Eugene. Randor's a grade 2, Eugene's a grade 3. So Bart is a typical grade 0 D-series starter. Then we move on to Nigel. Nigel's skill is, when rolled upon by Randor, he can soul charge 1. Okay. And that his other rearguard skill is that when your opponent's rearguard is retired, count last 1 and retire himself, you choose another one of the rearguards and retire it. So it's basically a 1-for-1 snipe. It's pretty good. I mean, set 1 and 2 Eugene definitely carry it at 4. Set 3 Eugene, however, it's more of a choice. I choose not to play Nigel on my main deck anymore, but that's not to say he's not a valid choice. He's still definitely a solid pick if you like to play him in Eugene for set 3. Then we have our grade 2, Randor. Randor's skill is, when rolled upon by Eugene, you may choose a card from your drop zone, put it into your soul, and draw a card. So effectively, it's a selected soul charge based on whatever you have sitting in your drop, which is very good because, it's a free soul charge without milling your deck. And in set 3 Eugene, we actually have reasons why you want to do this. So I will get to that in just a bit. Then we have Randor's second skill, Counterblast 1. When this unit attacks, if you have 2 or less rearguards, if your opponent has 2 or less rearguards, this unit gains 5,000 power, you soul charge 1. Now, a lot of you who remember my set 1 and 2 Eugene videos know that I'm very against this skill. Well, I'm very happy to say, not anymore. Eugene currently has a lot more options, such that now your Counterblast is actually relatively more liberal, which means you can actually use Randor to become a threatening center VG on turn 2, which is, it's great. I like that, the fact that now our right deck is becoming more and more relevant tells you a lot about the new options that Eugene has actually gotten. I must say though, Randor still makes 0 sense in the main deck, and you definitely don't want to play him there, but in terms of the right deck wise, his viability for me has just gone up tremendously. I mean, last time I was just like, oh crap, Randor again. But now it's like, oh, I get to use his skills now. It's actually really good. And of course, the big man is Eugene. 2 skills, it's the same 2. Rest 2 of your rearguards. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it. And then Eugene gets 10,000 power. Okay, not bad. Second skill is when, if one of your opponent's rearguards retired this turn, you may soul blast 5. Look at the top cards in your deck equal to the number of open rearguard circles. Superior call as many as you wish, then place the rest in your soul stack. Really simple in terms of plussing. You trade off the minusing you'll be doing to the opponent for free top deck calls. I've said this before. It's just Blade Master Merit with Gold Paladin. It's not too hard. It's a nice skill. It's definitely aged better in terms of the way it's going with set 3 support. So yeah, I'm quite a fan of it. Of course, if you prefer to play Derek, you can do so. But I think for Eugene players, it's still the same right deck, but the rest of the deck really changes. I just need to say everything before I actually start. Then of course we move on to our grade 3s. Our grade 3s, we play 1 Eugene for the right deck, 3 Eugenes in your main deck. We play 4 copies of Tribash still, and 3 copies of our new order, which is Capture Festival, or Capture Party, depends on what your translation is. I don't even know what the English version of this card's called, so feel free to correct me. Alright, let's actually break it down. We'll start with obviously 4 copies of Eugene, it's pretty obvious. I won't have to cover him. Just more copies for the sake of Persona, right? Then of course we talk about Tribash. Tribash has only 1 skill. It's basically, when your Vanguard attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, move him to your soul, your Vanguard gets +1 crit. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. So, the thing is that Tribash is just a freeway plus crit, and it trades itself from a body on the board to put in the soul, which contributes to your soul +5. That's actually pretty good. Sorry guys, I'm so sick. So, yeah, it's still the same card from set 1, it's still set 2. I probably don't know how they're going to power creep Tribash unless they make just an objectively better version of this card, because it's actually really critical to Eugene as a deck. You really want that crit pressure to end games, and you really just enjoy the fact that it cycles your board in terms of moving to the soul, so you open a new spot, you can do other things with that spot next turn. It's just a wonderful card. Sorry about that. Now, of course, we play 3 copies of the new order, Capture Festival. Capture Festival is a very new and interesting order that Eugene is going to set 3. In fact, it's one of its highlights. Choose your Vanguard. It's the normal order, okay? Choose your Vanguard, and it gets the skill. Whenever your opponent's rear guard is retired by a card effect, you may draw a card. So, at face value, you're like, oh, okay, how does that work? Remember, you're using an order, so you go -1. But then you check, oh, Eugene himself has a retire skill, so I can effectively just combo that with this, I get a draw. It's a net cycle. Then you look at the rest of the deck and you realize, oh, you know, there's a lot more retire options. So you get to plus more and more and more and more and more. You know, you still have stuff like Gibrasaurus from set 2, which is still an amazing card. Just use him and you draw again, you know, it's pretty good. This is one of the main highlights of set 3 Eugene in terms of the amount of plussing it can do. Which is a much needed plus, because Eugene last time didn't really plus very well. So this really helps. Of course, it's tied to the fact that you need to actually retire rear guards. So if your opponent has no rear guards, this thing is a brick. And with the added bonus that, you know, it only works from grade 3 onwards because it's a grade 3 order, which is why I played it at 3. I know a lot of people really push for this at 4 because it's a great card, and I certainly believe it's a great card. But for me, it just came down to the fact that, you know, there are some situations where it's absolutely useless, and we have to actually acknowledge that. There are people who just know that Eugene feeds off retires, and they just don't call. They just wait until the time is right, and we just call when we need them. So there are times where your Capture Festival barely works as a one-off. Like, you just use it once just to draw 1 card. So it's just a net cycle of 1, which is not that great in my opinion. It helps, but it's not that great. So personally, for me, I still think 3 is good. Honestly, if you play 2 or less, it's very risky, and you might as well just not even give this slot to Capture Party. But I think 3 is still a safe enough number where you still can consistently get its effects, and it's not horrible. It's an order, so do remember that if you use Eugene's skill to look with this card, you have to automatically put it in your soul. We move on to our grade 2s now. We play 1 copy of Randor for the right deck, 4 copies of the new Desert Gunner Dustin, and 4 copies of Gibrasaurus. Let's break it down. This is for the right deck. We're going to cover Gibrasaurus first, since he was the breakout star set 2. Really, he's still good, really. For rare, this guy is good value. Basically, has 2 skills, Soul Blast 1 and rest this unit. If your Vanguard's Eugene, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rear guards and retire it. So it's a free on-demand retire, and all you have to do is just rest this guy, you know. That's good. It's a good skill. So then you may be wondering, you know, it rests itself, then what do you do next? Well, there's a second part, and that is that at the start of your battle phase, you know, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, you may stand this unit. So it's effectively really good, and it gets 5k power. So it follows up with the whole magic number theme of Dragon Empire, where it goes up to, say, you know, 15k, and you say, hey, I like that. You know, it helps with the magic number beating, and it also doesn't really contribute to your dead weight loss on the board because you just stand it back up. So it's essentially just a Soul Blast 1 sack, and it gets 5k. The 5k is of course not attached to the Soul Blast. Yeah, it's still a very good card in my opinion. It can be replaced easily in maybe in set 4 or 5 or 6, but I still think that for a period of time that Eugene is being played, I think Gibrasaurus is a pretty good card, and it's still worth picking up from set 2. Of course, then we have our next new triple rare for Eugene. Yes, Baru Magnes did not get a triple rare, but Eugene did, so you know this is not bad. We're going into Dustin. Dustin has 2 effects. His first effect is when he's placed on a regular circle, you may choose a card from your hand and move in your soul. Again, you know, it's the same as Randor. When he's rolled upon by Eugene, you move a card from your drop zone into soul. And you may be wondering, oh, that's really weird. Why would I do that? I'll show you later. Okay? You choose one of your opponent's rare cards and retire it, and then you draw a card. Yeah, so it's essentially a 1-for-1 cycle for no cost and snipe. And then you may also have remembered that we just went through Capture Party. So essentially, it wasn't just a cycle. You actually got a +1. And it was absolutely free. Like, you paid no cost for this whatsoever. You just cycled 1 card from your hand, and it went to the soul. It wasn't even a discard. So, you can start to see why set 3 Eugene is pretty fun. You know, you have stuff like Dustin. And Dustin only gets even better, because Dustin has inherited something from Blade Master. Yes, people who have played G-Era Blade Master, or if you've actually seen my G-Era Blade Master video, you know it's in the channel, I actually played Mubidi in my premium deck, and this guy has an exact 1-for-1 ripoff of Mubidi's skill. Oh, it's not really a 1-for-1, but it's the same skill. When Dustin attacks, you may Soul Blast 1, he gets 2000 power for each open regular circle. It's Mubidi, you know. Every time you have an open regular circle on your opponent's side, it gets 2000 power, which is, you know, really good. Because you, on average, would sack, you know, about, say, you know, your opponent will obviously have about 3, 4 to 5 open regular circles, even without sacking. This skill is not reliant on any retire skill actually happening. As long as it's just open rearguards, you use the skill. It's a lot like Gauntlet Buster, which you can see on this mat here. So, it's just that good. I mean, yeah, Soul Blast 1's a bit pain because your soul is what you use and stuff like Eugene. But Eugene's deck has a lot of soul options that it's not really a big of a deal for you to actually use this resource this way to get power. If anything, a 20k beater is quite what Eugene needed. As you can tell from the past 2 videos I put up for set 2 Eugene and set 1 Eugene, Eugene's only had 15k beaters at most, and now you're telling me there's a 20k beater? I'm sold, and it's attached to a free snipe. You know, there's just no reason to not pick up Dustin, and he's dirt cheap for a triple rare, so he's a solid must play for Eugene. We move on to our grade 1s. This is where more explanations will be given. We play 4 copies of Orlando, we play 4 copies of Idris, we play 4 PG. And of course for the right deck, we play 1 copy of Nigel. Let's break it down. Nigel is for the main deck. I don't have to say this twice. This is your stronger PG. You obviously would like to play it. If you cannot afford it, just play the budget one. Idris is from set 2. He actually managed to stay in the deck, which personally I'm shocked because I'm like, what? I expected this guy to be out ASAP, but no. He's still here. He has 2 skills. If your opponent's rear guard is retired this turn, Counter Blast 1 and choose one of these 2 skills. 1. This unit gains 10,000 power to the end of turn. 2. Move this into your soul, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rear guards and retire it. It sounds very familiar, and it should, because Idris essentially sounds like a bit of Nigel in terms of the 1-for-1 snipe, and sounds a lot like Dustin in the fact that it actually can gain good power. If you've noticed thus far, this deck is actually pretty light on CV. So, you can actually afford to use Idris a lot more often. You can actually afford to even stack power on Idris to really hop over defensives or just your opponent's shields in general, which is good. And it has the added flexibility of course, being an extra retire option, which is always needed in Eugene. This flexibility, which I once really questioned in set 2 Eugene, I'm really appreciating it more in set 3 Eugene, which is honestly quite humbling because I was really expecting to throw this guy out. But no, he has somehow stood here. Let's see if he makes it to set 4 Eugene, but happy to have you on board, Idris. Of course, our last grade 1 slot is the one you've been waiting for. It's Orlando. Orlando has 2 skills. On a regular circle, you may move Orlando to your soul. When your vanguard attacks, it gets 5,000 power. It's like Tri-Mesh, but instead of crits, you get power. Not bad. It's a great one. So neat. Second skill is from the soul. You counterblast 1. If your opponent's rearguard's been tired this turn, you may call this to an open rearguard circle. And now everything makes sense, you know. Why would I use stuff like Dustin to put cards from my hand to the soul? Why would I use stuff like Randor to move stuff from my drop zone into my soul? This is the reason why. This guy is just great in the soul. You know, you want to train him into your soul stack in order for you to potentially get a free plus from the soul. You know that this guy's going to come out at a cost of 1 CB, and you can slide him back into the soul to get another 5k. And this guy is really one of the sources that you can really spend your CB on wisely. As long as you snipe one of your opponent's rearguards, you can effectively just pull him out for another body on the board. Which is really good for rare, you know. This is pretty good. I'm really happy that Orlando is a thing. Yes, I know that Eugene still doesn't have very good in-soul targets. You know, Orlando as he comes isn't game-breaking by any chance, neither is he, you know, redefining the deck. He's just, a new option in terms of plussing and moving power. But he is one of the main logical reasons why you play a lot of the current stuff in Eugene, where you trade stuff in the soul selectively. Orlando's one of those reasons why, because he really benefits from the soul. I can't really say how long he's going to be in the deck for. Orlando's that kind of card where he really just needs a good power crap version to kick him out for good. But yet, if he just never gets something in the same competing slot, he could stay in the deck for a very long period of time. So, honestly, I'm still happy Orlando's printed, obviously. You know, the fact that this is our first card that really makes stuff like Randor or even Dustin make sense, I'm glad. So, I hope Bushido keeps up this direction with Eugene, because the set 3 Eugene direction, pretty solid overall. Move on to our grade 0s, we play our starter, which is obviously Bart. Then we play other stuff. We play total 8 crit thanks to the new restriction. We play 3 draw. We play 1 OT, which is John Veda, sorry. And for heal. This lineup is super basic for Eugene. It's exactly the same lineup as the last 2 decks, I would say. Draw because Eugene's Peaceful Line, crits to end game, heals because it's Vanguard, OT, John Veda, it's a better OT. We play the Soul Crit because he could contribute to Eugene's Soul. I understand that Soul Crits are very expensive right now, and I don't blame you if you can't afford it, but for me, I made an effort because, you know, I do plan to play Eugene at higher levels, so yeah, I actually bought this. But if you don't want to, it's perfectly fine. And that wraps up set 3 Eugene. Really. The deck, as you can tell, hasn't changed fundamentally. It's really the same deck, just with the few options it got is just that good to not only make the deck better, but to put a new spin on what the deck has had before. I just really can't say that, oh, you know, Eugene's a bad deck anymore, because it really isn't. You know, when people say Eugene is best deck, now it will have an unironic meaning. Thank you so much for watching. Next video, I really don't know what I'm going to cover next. Maybe more O3 stuff, maybe some lyrical stuff, maybe more VCall. But I do know that I really did want to cover this right after I did the premium bandlist stuff. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below what you want to see, because I'm relatively open. As long as I can get my hands on it, you know I will talk about it. Thank you. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.